The marathon Brexit trade talks nearing the finish line in Brussels. The so far unofficial reports raising hopes that a chaotic exit on New Year's Day will now be averted. Meanwhile, violent clashes between police and trapped lorry drivers in Dover as tensions boil over. This after a two-day blockade. France is now allowing in those with a negative coronavirus test, but just a handful have been able to get their hands on one. And hailed as heroes, 3 French police officers killed and 1 wounded by a gunman who ambushed them as they were responding to a domestic violence call. The suspected attacker later found dead following an apparent suicide. For those of you just joining us, welcome to the France 24 newsroom in Paris. I'm Alexander Orcott. A huge tower of pizzas has been seen arriving at the EU headquarters as European Union and British negotiators work well into the night, hammering out the final details of a post-Brexit trade deal. News that they're on the brink of reaching an agreement sent the value of the pound surging against the dollar. The accord still needs to be signed off by the EU's 27 member states, however, before the end of the year, leaving little time for them to decide if they like all the toppings and whether they've had their fair share of the slice. With the latest, here's our London correspondent, Benedict Pavio.
The UK and the EU are continuing talks to find that deal, that elusive deal, after months of trying, and the clock is ticking down to the 31st of December. We're told they're close to reaching a deal. The key hurdles are still fishing rights, apparently, and business competition rules. As I said, the 31st of December is the ultimate date. The British government says that will be it, and that they're prepared for any outcome, deal or no deal. The EU has now said that they're prepared to continue talking into 2021. So we've had a few false starts this evening, thinking that it was done, but it isn't. If there is a deal later tonight or in the morning on Christmas Eve, will there be time to ratify a deal both here in the British Parliament? There is a question mark over calling back MPs and the possibility that the Houses would be called back next Wednesday, both the House of Commons and the House of Lords, and then it would get royal assent. But then it needs EU approval. Would it be enough time to get that EU Parliament approval and the EU member states? Everybody needs to read it and agree it. Time is running out.
Meanwhile, chaos continues at the UK's southern port of Dover. Nothing officially to do with Brexit, but rather as hundreds of lorries tried to make the crossing after France's 2-day-long blockade. That was called to try to prevent a more contagious mutant strain of coronavirus spreading outside of the UK. The hold-up led to violent clashes between some lorry drivers and the police, even after France reopened its border for those who could produce a recent negative COVID-19 test. Yuka Roya has the story.
Freedom! Freedom! Freedom!
Freedom, they shout, with their hopes of driving home for Christmas becoming increasingly dashed. Some clashed with police, their frustration boiling over after being stuck at the port for over 2 days.
We've got no food, we've got no toilets. We hope we've got the test today, to be at home tomorrow for the Christmas time with our families.
We're here 3 days ago, and for first time yesterday in the evening we have a support, 3 bottles of water and 1 pack of crisps.
After abruptly shutting the border with the UK on Sunday, France agreed to allow essential travellers and lorry drivers to cross the channel, provided they've tested negative to COVID-19 within the previous 72 hours. Queues at Dover had already reached dozens of kilometres before the border closure, as prospects of a no-deal Brexit prompted thousands of lorries to rush to take goods to Europe before the end of the year. Although ferries resumed transporting passengers and goods, travel chaos is far from being eased.
Some cars blocked the entrance to the port because some people do not have a negative test result, but they do not want to make space.
There's no places to do drive-through test. There's no one helping.
One piece of good news, French authorities are accepting lateral flow tests, which are faster and easier than the PCR. The deal made by France and Britain could last until the 6th of January, depending on the spread of the virus. Other European nations, such as Germany, have decided to maintain their travel ban.
Now, well, more than 50 nations have halted flights from Britain due to the new strain of coronavirus. Britain itself has now imposed a travel ban on South Africa, where an even newer strain has been detected that's even more contagious. Here's the Health Minister, Matt Hancock.
We've detected 2 cases of another new variant of coronavirus here in the UK. Both are contacts of cases who have travelled from South Africa over the past few weeks. This new variant is highly concerning because it is yet more transmissible and it appears to have mutated further than the new variant that's been discovered in the UK.
Europe is preparing to launch its massive vaccination campaign 2 days after Christmas, a few weeks after the UK and the US. The Pfizer-BioNTech inoculation, which is about 95% effective, has been developed using revolutionary new techniques and in record time. Julia Seeger and Catherine Kadir-Clifford explain.
The traditional method of producing a vaccine, used by renowned French scientist Louis Pasteur, consists of injecting an inactivated form of the virus in whole or in parts. Firstly, the virus is replicated and purified in a laboratory. Once the vaccine has been injected, the cells then identify the virus and produce antibodies capable of neutralizing it. The body will then memorize how to fight it in the case of future infections. This is the method chosen by some laboratories, such as the Chinese Sinovac Biotech. The new generation of DNA-RNA vaccines is different. The aim is no longer to inject the virus itself, but the messenger RNA. It's genetic instruction that orders the formation of spikes, proteins on the surface that give the coronavirus its crown shape. When this genetic information is injected directly into human cells, they will read it as a formula and will themselves produce these spikes, which are fortunately harmless to humans. The immune system will all the same recognize them as foreign and produce antibodies. Then, when the time comes that the immune system is confronted with the real spikes, it will know how to neutralize them. Although these vaccines are simpler and quicker to produce, they need to be stored at very low temperatures. Within the same family of inoculations are viral vector vaccines. Here, the genetic material is transported to the cell by another virus to trigger a stronger immune response. This is the method used by AstraZeneca and many other pharmaceutical companies.
Well, with Europe still days away from beginning its vaccination campaign, in the United States, 1 million people have already been inoculated. This is, however, far short of the target of 20 million by the end of the month. Doses are sitting unused in US hospitals as they get used to preparing the frozen shots for use and find the staff required to run the clinics. Well, staying in the US and continuing a flurry of unexpected moves as his presidency nears its end, Donald Trump has vetoed a bipartisan defense policy bill shortly after also refusing to sign the $900 billion coronavirus aid package, demanding changes. Both pieces of legislation passed Congress by wide bipartisan margins following months of negotiations and will therefore prove pretty hard to refashion. Earlier, France 24 spoke with Ian Rafowitz, a professor at the State University of New York, for his reaction.
If no package is secured, that means the government is shut down in I believe, 3 days. That's not going to happen. So then the question becomes, how does Donald Trump deal with that, right? I mean, if the government just were to shut down, let's say between now and the time when Biden took office, you would have chaos. You would have chaos in the streets because you'd have millions of people without paychecks. So at the end of the day, what would happen would be that Congress will override the veto. I just don't see any way around it. Now, if I'm wrong and Republicans come together to sustain that veto, then I honestly have absolutely no idea how this could play out. It would be completely unprecedented. Trump and his Representative Treasury Secretary Mnuchin were involved in the negotiations. They were involved in negotiations for months. And then for him to suddenly back out at the last second shows you what he really is, which is a disruptor. He's a chaos agent. He's not a leader.
Now, while the majority of the world's economies have been crippled by the global pandemic, in the city where it's believed to have all began, Wuhan in China, business is now booming. A year after the first cases were detected there, the economy is now almost back to pre-coronavirus levels. Some sectors have even been able to thrive in this tough environment, transforming crisis into opportunity. Charles Pellegrin reports.
It's one of the defining scenes of daily life in Wuhan. People, young and old, queuing up for a bowl of ruganmian. Their mastery of the local specialty, noodles with sesame sauce, has given this chain of restaurants a base of loyal customers as well as awards. Owner Mr. Luo had to close shop for 3 months during the city's lockdown and throw away all his stock, but business has since bounced back. Now he says he has even more customers than before, but that's not the only thing that matters.
当时也有人说热干面回来了，武汉就醒了。然后武汉对于热干面对于武汉人来说呢，它是一个情怀型产品，它不只相当于是一碗面，而更多的是对于武汉人和外地人来说是一个陪伴。
The spirit of the city can also be found in its industry. Wuhan is one of the manufacturing engines of China, part of which services the telecom sector. This factory makes fiber optic cables. Lockdown measures the world over have made online communications even more essential than before. This company is responding to the demand and thriving.
相较于疫情之前，我们这个产品呢，它那个产量有一个50%的一些增长。之前疫情前，我们一天大概是1000条左右，那现在是在1500条。我们疫情之后，我们增加了有将近40位员工，以前是20位，现在已经增加到60位员工，所以整个量有些提升。然后针对这个产品，因为我们现在整个的空间的一些局限，我们后面可能还会继续扩大一些产能。
E-commerce has also benefited from the pandemic. This package distribution center has seen traffic increase by over 30% this year, boosted by the lockdown and a new older customer base who have now been converted to online shopping. Even if some sectors are thriving, there's still a long way to go before business returns to normal. The GDP of Hubei province has shrunk over 10% in 2020.
3 French police officers have been killed and a 4th wounded by a heavily armed gunman in a remote village around 150 kilometers west of Lyon. The gendarmes came under attack while responding to a call-out related to domestic violence. The suspected attacker, said to be a former soldier, was later found dead in his car of apparent suicide. Yuka Roya has the story.
Residents in Ambert are in shock after 3 local police officers were killed while trying to save a woman from a suspected wife-beater.
Je pleure avec la gendarmerie parce qu'on oublie trop quand même de leur rendre hommage.
Nous, on a perdu 3 enfants sur notre commune et sur notre territoire. Voilà, donc on est très émus.
The gruesome event took place in a remote village of Saint-Just in the heart of the volcanic region of Puy-de-Dôme. The policemen responded to a domestic violence call and found the woman on the roof of a burning house. In an ensuing standoff, her partner opened fire, killing the 3 officers and injuring a 4th. According to French media, the man was heavily armed with an assault rifle and 2 handguns. Other security forces arrived at the scene and rescued the woman and her child. Visiting the area, France's Interior Minister offered his condolences and praised the daily efforts made by the country's police force.
Dans une intervention courageuse et héroïque, quotidienne, pour secourir une femme et son enfant de violences conjugales, de violences familiales, sont morts cette nuit dans des circonstances particulièrement ignobles.
President Emmanuel Macron on Twitter expressed solidarity with France's security forces, calling the slain officers our heroes.
That's the end of this edition. Stay tuned for more updates coming up here on France 24.